Thank you very much, Will and Peter. I feel a really deep empathy with my speech students right now. This is a huge audience. It's unbelievable. All right, well, I thought it'd be a good time to reassure you, class of 2016, that sometimes you too will stand alone. Standing alone sounds scary, and it sort of is. It is temporary, though, and it has profound value, and is not necessarily a lonely act. That paradox will make more sense here soon enough. But I suppose that impending solitude is why so much is made of this moment, this night, by the adults around you. We want you to feel supported as possible before you leave for the unknown. Life happens, and the best laid plans often go awry. You might have to stand alone unexpectedly, but right now, you are safe. You are among those who care about you, including me. I have lived a life of many standalone moments, but being surrounded by family and friends made those moments bearable. For example, I entered college at Drake, as an Army ROTC cadet at Drake University. While my friends were worried about their majors and careers, I was on cruise control because the Army was paying my way through school. All I owed them was 8 years of service after I graduated. I opted to apply to airborne school after my sophomore year, where I would learn how to jump out of an airplane, courtesy of the Army. Now, I have a mild fear of heights, but I decided to face that fear squarely and test my mettle because I can be sort of stubborn. I wanted to accelerate my Army training, and I was 19, which meant that sometimes my decisions defied common sense. And I would like to dwell on that dynamic a little bit because I think you guys and your parents understand that in very different ways right now. So applying meant that I had to go in for a physical. My only concern was that I had had back surgeries 2 years prior, which had jeopardized my scholarship initially. And sure enough, the physician scrutinized the scar on my back and told me I really shouldn't be a part of ROTC because there was a risk of re-injury. So no airborne school that summer. Then in August, just before I was to return to Drake for my junior year, the Army made it official and medically discharged me from ROTC, which meant that I lost my scholarship. And that meant I could no longer attend Drake. And that meant I was no longer on cruise control with my future. It was going to happen very soon. And there was no backup plan yet. 3 days later, I celebrated my golden birthday, consisting of only me, my parents, and my older sister out because all my friends were gone. The name of the restaurant where we ate this lovely meal, and I'm not making this up, the Sunshine Factory. The English teacher in me really appreciates the irony of that name now, but at that time, not so much. So I faced a semester at home, alone. The aloneness did not really go away that January when I transferred to the University of Wisconsin. I knew just 5 souls on a campus of 26,000 students. I had my English major, but no solid plans after graduation now that the Army was gone. To make matters worse, it was negative 20 degrees my first week of classes. The 30-mile-an-hour winds seemed to just kind of hit me in the face no matter where I walked. Bascom Hill felt like a mountain. It's like life just kept lobbing metaphors at me. However, I had family and friends to help me through it, even when they weren't physically near me. The aloneness faded, and my time at Wisconsin is easily one of the highlights of my life. And the best part, transferring set my life on a trajectory that eventually brought me to you. Thus, there was value standing alone. But it took me years to realize that, because at the time, it just hurt. I wish I could reassure you that wisdom arrives every 56 minutes, but it will find you when you're ready, sometimes years later. So sometimes you'll stand alone, and you have actually learned this many times over here at Minnetonka. Over the years, you have studied pivotal historical figures who stood alone against powerful forces, studied the mathematical, artistic, and scientific concepts of those who were considered radicals or even heretics during their time. And in the land of English, you have witnessed characters and people standing alone. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus stands alone in the Maycomb courtroom. Scout stands alone on Boo Radley's porch. Holden Caulfield stands alone in The Catcher in the Rye in his misery and trauma in New York City. Simon stands alone against the boys in The Lord of the Flies. Jane Eyre stands alone in Thornfield, wondering what's next for her as a governess. Henry David Thoreau went to Walden Pond alone to truly live. In Black Boy, Richard Wright stood alone on a street corner in Memphis, contemplating the next step in his migration to Chicago. And Hamlet wanders alone in his room to be or not to be. Each of those stories showed you the consequences and fleeting nature of standing alone. Sometimes tragedy ensued. Sometimes the characters' lives pivoted in unexpected ways. Either way, you got to witness it, learn from it, so that when it comes time for you to face the world alone, you have at least glanced at a blueprint of sorts in these characters and people's stories. For me, I reread The Great Gatsby my semester home, and it was a totally different book for me at age 20 than it was when I was 17. In it, the narrator, Nick Carraway, returns to the Midwest alone and reflects back on his experience in New York. Reading it, it was almost like Nick's thoughts had become my own. So again, don't worry, standing alone is not a permanent state. It is temporary. It helps us see ourselves more clearly when we do eventually rejoin the group. Which brings us back to you, class of 2016. Here's what I have seen when you have stood alone this year. I have seen you stand alone and deliver creative and thoughtful speeches to your peers. Speeches that change people's minds about your subject matter, but more importantly, change what they thought about you. I have read your essays, so many essays, where you have stood alone with an idea and tried to communicate it to me coherently. Maybe more importantly this year, I've had conversations with many of you about life outside of the classroom. Some of you have had to stand alone against the loss of loved ones in your family. Stand alone among family members doing themselves or their family harm. Stand alone in your beliefs against your classmates. Stand alone amid friends who are not the friends you thought they were. Some of you are well versed in standing alone. However, I have also seen you reach out to a new kid from Nebraska and help him feel less alone. Stand alone and hit a crucial free throw late in the girls' basketball championship game. Stand alone and deliver a moving solo during Pippin. Stand alone and facilitate a card game night at a local senior citizen's residence. You even helped my son in his visits to our classroom and at Explorers Club at Clear Springs stand less alone this year. But now, you will stand together as a graduating class, a symbolically powerful act. It is an honor to be with you as you do so. Your presence in this district, in this school, helped us see ourselves a little clearer. You have stood among us for a while. Now you will stand alone on campuses, in workplaces, in lands far away, or in service to our country. We hope you can stand a little taller when you do, knowing that we're nearby. Thank you, and congratulations.